Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Retro Culture presents the Hoop-Tober tapes, a special event for the spooky season. Hoop-Tober Ocho, Tape 5.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back, generous listeners, to the finale of the Retro Culture Hoop-Tober Tapes Countdown. I am your voluminous host, Brett the Voice Without Body, and once again with me, rounding out this particular event of the past spooky season, I have
Tyler, you're a warrior of the wastes. Back for more, baby.
And, well, there's only a few more left, and God help us, we're gonna get through them quicker than a chicken in most fryers.
I don't know, sometimes you can fry a chicken pretty slowly.
Yeah, but I like my meat tender.
Touché.
First of the titles we are to be discussing today will be the 2001 film Ghosts of Mars. Written and directed by one Mr. John Carpenter and starring Natasha Henstridge, Jason Statham, Ice Cube, Pam Grier, Clea Duvall, and my personal favorite, Richard Citrone as Ooh!
That was his name, wasn't it?
Might as well have been. If I remember correctly, he is credited in the movie as Big Daddy Mars, but I believe when he introduced himself, he said, "Oh!"
Big Daddy Mars. I don't remember that from the credits, but dang it, I want to go back and look now.
So Ghosts of Mars is the story of the equivalent of Mars's police force seeking to escort a notorious criminal from a particular outpost located on the far end of Mars. But once their particular train arrives at that outpost, they find the station completely deserted. The particular crew we're following consisting of a drug-addicted second-in-command officer, rather belligerent and predatory bald-headed sumbitch played by Jason Statham. Our lead is Natasha Henstridge. The commander of this particular crew is Pam Grier in her brief supporting role, supported by the likes of Clea Duvall, who I did not expect to pop up in this. And as they explore this particular outpost, they discover that most of the inhabitants have been overtaken by this curiously spiritual and cult-like entity that has currently invaded the populace and inhabited them to move over toward a mining outpost and start worshipping some stuff. And eventually it just boils down to the crew gets trapped inside of the police station at this particular ghost town while waiting for the ghosts to inevitably try and break in and steal their souls, ravage their minds, the usual. And then they spend a nice little time going back and forth from police station to train station, back to the police station, making about 5 feet way out of the station towards the train station, then running all the way back, and it's a whole thing. So this is the second to last movie John Carpenter directed. We participated in his last film a few Hoop-Tobers back when we watched The Ward. You, myself, and Phil were in part of that particular little adventure.
Yeah, that's right.
I believe we paired it up with Moon of the Wolf.
Oh yeah, I brought that one over.
Yes, but Ghosts of Mars is a movie. Tyler, how was the movie Ghosts of Mars? The movie in theaters, coming soon to cinemas.
It was an experience of the cinematic variety. There's not a lot really to remember about this one. It definitely felt like an early 2000s movie just from how it was edited and even how the story was put together. I don't know. You can't win them all, Mr. Carpenter. Definitely the least of his works, at least from what I've seen so far. But, I mean, it still has its fun points. Like, the action scenes are incredibly goofy and nonsensical. Even like tons of explosions, a bunch of extras in weird makeup and costumes running around shooting guns and screaming their heads off. Especially our Big Daddy Mars character, who just is chewing as much scenery as can be possible in that role. But yeah, as far as anything like substantial or really atmospheric as compared to some of other Carpenter works that we've seen,
Even relegated to this year.
yeah, exactly. This one just doesn't quite hold up under scrutiny as well as the other ones do. That being said, I don't know, you could probably still have some fun with it. It's basically Carpenter's B movie. This is very, very firmly in his B movie category. And there is some dedication put into the set design, I will say. We do have some nice miniatures. The soundtrack is actually still worth noting. Like, you could probably go back and listen to it and still have a good time with it. But as far as the actual movie goes, I don't know if I would. This would definitely not be the first thing I would recommend from Carpenter's directorial library.
Yeah, connecting directly to one of your last points, the soundtrack, John Carpenter, he wrote the synthesizer pieces himself, but then recruited, this is directly from the Wikipedia, an all-star cast of rock guitarists to flesh it out and record the rest of the score in studio, including members of the metal band Anthrax, virtuoso Steve Vai, another band called Buckethead, and as well as the former guitarist for Guns N' Roses and current Nine Inch Nails guitarist Robin Fink, to record a much more metallic score to accompany the film. And it shows, I will say that.
I mean, yeah, like the amount of talent that Carpenter manages to get a hold of is actually fairly substantial. And I feel like I just want to go back and maybe just listen to the soundtrack on its own, just to see if there's like maybe a few gems in there that I could pull from it. As a metal fan and fan of Carpenter's soundtrack work, like ever since I just started watching his movies, I've loved his scores and soundtracks that he's composed. So this would be a really cool one to revisit and see if there's more to love there than maybe the film had to offer.
I did not as much dislike this movie as I was sort of massively underwhelmed by the idea of, it's John Carpenter making a true blue science fiction movie, like the first one he's made in outer space since like Dark Star. I'm like, whoo, that sounds pretty neat actually. Even though you take into account that you look at the way this movie is outlined and the progression that this appears in his filmography, and you can very easily tell this was supposed to be the third Escape From movie. I mean, Ice Cube is just a palette swap of Snake Plissken.
Actually, yeah, you know what? That tracks.
Yeah, notorious super criminal is being hunted down by the law, only for the law to have to team up with him. It's like, yeah, it's a combination of an escape film and Assault on Precinct 13. It is just science fiction Precinct 13. They're trapped in one location. They try, and every effort they have to escape is usually pushed back. Although this one has a bit more gore going for it, even if Assault on Precinct 13 has that notorious death scene of that little girl.
Yeah, one or two surprisingly gory bits, but not enough to really stand out and be too memorable.
I mean, it does have, like, cannons that shoot, like, buzzsaw blades. I'm like, okay, it's not bad.
I mean, hell, there were people chucking buzzsaw blades like they were frisbees in this movie.
Meanwhile, in the background, whoa! Yeah, makeup effects weren't bad. I'll give it that. Jason Statham plays a weirdly rapey character. Well, yeah, not rapey, but he doesn't know the meaning of the word no. More than anything else, Pam Grier is here for 5 minutes and a check.
Yeah.
And I respect Natasha Henstridge a lot, but I don't think she was the right choice to lead this movie. She emphasized the wrong aspect of being a drug-addicted lead in that she felt like she was sleepwalking through it, which, again, can be written off, oh, she's on drugs. It's like,
Just seems like more like she needs a nap.
Yeah, like, again, that could have been played into with either slightly better direction or slightly better writing, but there wasn't enough really support even the slim genre trappings this is playing with.
Yeah, it's very much a meh.
It even goes nuclear in the end, and even that's not enough to bring it back.
Nah, not really.
It's fine, which is something I don't really want to have to say about a John Carpenter movie. Sorry to say.
3 out of 5.
Next up, we are moving right back to something of yours. It was actually, let's see, 1, 2. The next 5 movies are actually all yours, but I will be popping in to talk on a couple of them because I have seen at least 3 of these, so I can give my opinions on them. Hell yeah, I've actually given my opinions on at least a couple of these in previous Hoop-Tober tapes. But next up on the list, one of the films you watched would be 1967's V?
That's correct, 1967.
Directed by Georgy Kropotchev and Konstantin Erkov, and starring the talents of Leonid Kravliov and Natalia Varley. Tyler, now it's pop quiz, hotshot. Tell me about V.
Oh, geez, and I didn't bring my number 2 pencil. V was definitely a good one to have on my Hoop-Tober list after the likes of Ghosts of Mars. This was a very, very, very charming little movie from the 1960s that really cements itself as, I think, a classic of, like, I don't even know if you'd call it a genre, but like the witch trope in movies. This is a very, very good example of that. That I suppose creature trope would be a good way to put it. We start out with our lead, who is a practicing not parishioner, but what's the word? He's a clergyman.
Yeah, he's a cleric in training.
Yeah, practicing cleric, who ventures off apparently on their like weird little holiday from cleric school or whatever.
Equivalent of spring break in Florida. Hell yeah, we going to drink!
Party time! And on this espionage, he winds up at this farmhouse. I don't know. I'm making up words here. I'm trying to talk. On this little escapade. How about that?
There we go. I was like, he's not James Bond.
But he winds up at this farmhouse where an elderly woman allows him and a couple of his buddies to stay for the night, and then is beset upon by said hag, who, after jumping onto his back and for a while using him like a child playing horsey, is eventually picked up into the air, and it's discovered that, holy shit, this old lady's a witch. And after by today's standards, a fairly obvious green-screened flight across the countryside.
Hey, for 1967 Soviet Union, that's a pretty good effect.
For that time, it was very good. He ends up being dropped off in seemingly the middle of nowhere, at which point he then begins to violently assault this witch, who then turns into a beautiful young woman, and that is what prompts him to stop the beating.
Oh no, she's hot!
Exactly. Shit, I wouldn't have done this if I'd known she was pretty, which even then I think is just a illusion by the witch herself, but we'll get into that. And then in shock and horror at what he runs away, leaving the girl basically on her deathbed. And he arrives back at his parish only to discover that, hey, this lord from the village that you were just visiting has requested you go and perform the last rites for this woman who is on her deathbed. We don't know why she's on her deathbed or why she requested you, but off you go. Only for him to arrive, the woman has already perished. And we then proceed into the real meat of the story, which is him reading his last rites for the woman that he assaulted and basically beat to death, and her tormenting him with all kinds of witchery and black magic. Each and every night. He has to read the rites for 3 consecutive nights. Each time he must be alone with the body in the temple. So the first night, it's like fairly standard stuff. The corpse gets up, starts walking around.
You know, your usual death ceremony. The corpse is still walking. Take care of that.
I'm in my holy chalk circle. Nothing can get me here. And he proceeds to rather haphazardly in his absolute terror at what's happening, perform these rites and rituals while praying for his life. So it proceeds like this, and it's a very good, like, small amount of build-up from the first night into the second. I don't know, should I jump into spoilers here? Is that okay for anyone who might want to watch this? I'll say that the first 2 nights, yeah, they were pretty creepy. Pretty much what I would have expected in terms of escalation of the situation. The third night, though, goes absolutely insane. Like, we get to some trippy shit that absolutely blows the past 2 nights out of the water in terms of effects and, like, sets and props and everything that's being used. It just goes absolutely mad. To the point where, yes, I very much believe that this guy deserved to be found dead of fright at the end of it all. And I don't even think that's a spoiler, because it's not the climax of what happens, and you just need to see this for yourself. I don't think I can even put it into words. It is a demonic show for the ages. I will say, as far as the film overall, it is a very slow build. We do spend a lot of time with our main character just outside of the village and away from the main story that we're trying to deal with. It's a lot of him just trying to avoid his job and, like, traveling with these people and, like, trying to get off at the first convenient stop or jump out of the wagon. They're like, "Oh, no, you don't, Mr. Cleric. You're not at your stop yet. Boy, you're silly. Come on, have some vodka." No joke, they drink vodka almost every day in this movie.
I mean, it's Russia.
It is.
Slash the Ukraine, slash... It's the Soviet Union. This was, like, technically the united, like, work of, like, at least 6 countries working together to put this thing out, so...
Yeah, very much so. I think mostly Ukrainian for the time.
Imagine how many peasants starved in order to make those final special effects pop.
A fair few sacrificed for the good of the demonic ritual. When we get into the spooks are definitely there, and that's what I think I found most charming about V, is the old school method of scare, but also the just absolute success in terms of executing on a payoff after so much build-up that probably is nowhere near what you expect going into it throughout the majority of the film. Like, it goes, it leaps a few tiers as we get to the final climax of the film. And for that, it has my utmost respect and will probably be one that I revisit.
Oh yeah, I saw this, I believe, 2 Hoop-Tobers ago. And I had been hearing little snippets about this here and there, especially from the likes of Goro from Talk with Rhythm. It was his favorite watch of, like, one of his years that he did, like, a retrospective cast, and he's like, "Yeah, this is, like, my favorite movie that's not from this year that I watched." And I was like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." And I caught up with it, and the tone is something to describe about this. The heights this movie reaches is sort of like Hitchcock's Vertigo, but via the tone and presentation of Mary Poppins, especially in terms of its special effects budget. Because there's some oddly whimsical scares going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of weird and garish things popping out of the ground at the end of the movie.
You know, actually, one thing that I thought of when I was watching, like, the first 2 nights was Fiddler on the Roof, oddly enough.
A little bit, yeah, the dream sequence they have is like, ah!
Exactly. Tavia!
Yeah, there was a lot of... I almost have to think Norman Jewison had to have seen a cut of V before he made Fiddler on the Roof, given how much the dream sequence looks a bit like V.
I think so. I think there may be some crossover influence happening here.
Why not? Yeah, I legitimately love this movie. Also, I am gonna be quite frank. I think Natalia Varley is very cute in this movie. So it's like, ooh, hello. And I've got
absolutely.
It's like, oh, and I just love I am a sucker for old school special effects that may show their age, but god damn it, they're going for it. Like that effect where she's just levitating herself on like the coffin, like revolving around the chalk. So you're like, ooh, that's pretty cool, actually. I want that as like my ringtone background or something. Like I want that image like at my beck and call. Like, hey, come here.
I mean, honestly, it still tracks well. Like, you can see the like projection screen and everything in some other shots, but it is also blended very, very well to the point where you could see like, no, I could buy this if I didn't know what the effect was.
Yeah, I would compare it to the likes of the Skull. We can tell how it's done, but god damn it, it's still charming as hell.
Exactly.
And by god, the creature design and the creature effects they pull off in that final bit, especially there's a specific shot involving little skeletons leaping out of holes in the floor. Like, ooh, I really like that.
Honestly, for me, it was the hands reaching up from the floor and like the use of scale and projection and green screen and stuff like that I really, really
The
enjoyed.
skeletal hydra that you can tell is just Athletics legs moving up and down, back and forth.
Oh no, yeah. Love that stuff.
It's like, ooh, spooky! Bicycle kicks!
Fear the feet!
And the titular V that is like the big bad to show up and like, ooh, that's a pretty neat idea for a monster, actually.
But yeah, tons of fun.
Yeah, I believe, did you watch this on Shudder?
I believe I did, yes.
As did I. I watched it when I was subscribed to Shudder via Amazon, so that's how I watched it back in the day. But yeah, there was also a Blu-ray released by Severin Films that I desperately want to pick up because, god damn it, I believe the frontispiece for the Blu-ray edition is those skeletons sitting in the holes before they leap out. And I'm like, ooh, that I like that image a lot. I think there's also a t-shirt that comes along with it in certain releases, but yeah, I highly recommend all audiences seek this out at a moment's notice. Ghosts of Mars, yeah, you can rent it, but V, I believe, is worth spending money on, even if some people may bounce off the aged special effects. But I like what I like.
Age doesn't mean a classic goes unappreciated.
Yeah, it's just if people can still watch Vertigo and Mary Poppins, by God, you can watch V.
Agreed.
And that brings us next to, from the year 2020, the year nothing went wrong. We have Brahms, The Boy 2, directed by W. Brent Bell, starring Katie Holmes, Ralph Ineson, Christopher Convery, and Owen Human. Tyler, how'd you like Brahms, The Boy 2?
I did it. Next movie.
Now, Tyler. The contract states...
Damn you and the fine print. Okay. And 2020, the year where nothing went wrong. This is where we went wrong. Everything was because of the... No, it wasn't all because of The Boy 2, but man, it didn't help. Okay, first of all, I really don't like the prequel to this movie at all anyway. So this...
Well, it's not a prequel. It's the original installment.
The prequel to Brahms' The Boy 2. The prequel to that is The Boy, to which, yeah, the first installment. How about that? That one I gave, I think, 1 star as well, and this one tracks right along with that one. Because for whatever the first movie tried to be, which I think it tried to be a psychological thriller, and just kind of went tropes galore with it, and even ended in a way that just felt incredibly lackluster and kind of took the teeth out of everything. Like, there was some build in the first installment, but then it just crapped the bed and just didn't fulfill on any of it at all in a satisfying way. That, I think, can be said about what happens here as well, especially since they try to retrofit something into this story that was never a part of the original to begin with.
Oh, Katie Holmes?
No, not even a character. I'm talking, like... They try to add lore to the puppet, Brett. They try to give a reason as to why all the shit in the first movie happened outside of the immediate family presence in that movie. It wasn't Brahms's fault that he went mad. It was the puppet that did everything, because apparently this puppet has been handed down through generations of families where the young boys in all those families all wound up killing their immediate family members. Didn't you see that in the first movie anywhere? I didn't.
I didn't watch either of these movies.
Good. Stay away. Oh, man.
Will fans of creepy puppet dolls even have something to pull out of this movie?
Not really. I mean, they try to make the puppet creepy in all the ways you expect them to try to make a puppet look creepy. And then, for the stuff they try to scare you with, it legitimately just looks like accidents. Like stuff where there's not even a supernatural influence going on at all. Like, I think the worst injury that happens in this movie is a kid accidentally topples over backwards onto a broken wooden stake and stabs himself through the shoulder. Even then, the kid was being a dick, so I saw it coming anyway. But it was trying to imply they try to lead you to believe that this puppet's, like, tries to supernaturally influence our lead child character into letting go during the middle of a tug of war, so the kid falls back onto a broken wooden stake. I just don't buy it. It feels like this puppet didn't do a damn thing. It's just sitting there, and then kid decides to be a jerk and let go, so a kid stabs himself through the shoulder. And they try to play it like this kid is suffering through post-traumatic stress disorder after there's a home break-in at the beginning, and so he's mute throughout most of the movie because shock, I guess. And they try to make it seem like the puppet is what draws him out to talk again, or
because that approach worked so well for Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
Yeah, precisely my point. And then there's the aspect of the parents being absolute morons who blame their child for things that no child could physically do, like overturning an entire mahogany dinner table and chairs within the split few seconds that they leave. And, of course, the kid says, "You made Brahms mad." And, okay. When the crux of your entire film could be solved by breaking the damn puppet, you break the damn puppet. I don't care if this is like something your child found that he wants to hold on to. If weird shit starts happening and your kid starts blaming the puppet, you get rid of the goddamn puppet. And that's how this entire movie is solved, is the puppet is chucked into a furnace and burned. And that, well, actually they try to leave it off on a stinger like, ooh, he's actually inhabiting the body of the child now and they coexist in the same body. No, they don't. No, they don't. This puppet is dead. Let it burn. Let him die. This movie is stupid. Its plot is stupid. Yeah, I hate it.
But the first one made money, Tyler. And the second one could have too if it weren't for that blasted virus.
Did it? Was it released? I thought The Boy was a...
Oh yeah. Yeah, The Boy 2 was in theaters when the world shut down.
Seriously?
Yeah, Brahms was one of the few movies left in theaters before the world shut the hell down.
Oh, you poor, poor people.
Yeah, it was like that, The Way Back, Emma, The Invisible Man. There were very few movies that went directly PVOD after that. Like, The Invisible Man was one of them. Emma was one of them. But yeah, Brahms The Boy 2 was one of the last things to be in theaters during 2020 proper.
Oh, Lord. I mean, that's just a testament to the times we were in back then. But yeah, Brahms The Boy 2. It's not only a cliche movie, but it's a poorly executed cliche movie with beats that make no sense coming off of the first one, and even the first one was bad. So if you can somehow double down on being a bad horror franchise, this is how you do it. Avoid it. Don't watch it. Don't watch either of these movies unless you are seriously in a mood to just watch something bad. I know, I full disclosure, I have been in those moods sometimes where I just want to watch something junk. Brett can attest to this. I took him to see The Bye-Bye Man.
I mean, you didn't have to bring that up. I was going to stay quiet, but...
If you weren't going to bring it up, I was.
Glutton for punishment.
I am.
All right, but next we will be venturing a bit away from that particular brand of horror and coming into a bit more upbeat horror flick, being 2001's Bones? Bones, directed by one Mr. Ernest Dickerson, a quite interesting person in the horror canon, and starring Snoop Dogg, Pam Grier, Clifton Powell, and Catherine Isabel appears in this movie. A movie I have not gotten to, but Tyler, tell me about The Bones.
All right, coming off of Brahms, this was definitely a refresher. Like
Brahms versus Bones, Judgment Night.
Bones wins, hands down. But this was a surprise. Like, you go into a movie where someone like Snoop Dogg is the lead, and it can be, you kind of expect it to be maybe one of two things. It could either be like incredibly hokey and just like not really a horror movie at all, or it could actually turn out to be, you know, something where maybe his talent actually shines. And I gotta say, this was probably one of my favorite watches of Hoop-Tober. Though I don't give it like 5 stars or anything like that. It's not quite up to that level of ratings for cinema or my movie-going experience or things like that. But I will give props to a solid piece of work with some fun aspects to it when it appears in front of me. I feel like the best way I can describe this is like it's Hellraiser meets Candyman in some ways, because we start off with kind of our bit of a story about our character of Jimmy Bones, who was I don't know if he was necessarily a pimp or if he was just a gang leader / drug lord sort of person over this inner city neighborhood, who actually manages to kind of turn it into like a really successful and well-run community. Like, if he's doing this by peddling drugs on the side, he's doing it somewhere else, because this neighborhood looks really, really swanky. Either that, or he's just like, you know, maybe like an oligarch of some kind who's just overseeing everybody and taking care of it. I don't know. It was hard to tell, especially since he meets with drug dealers and things like that and treats them like friends. So, whatever you have. Basically, Jimmy Bones, reputable dude, good character, built up a neighborhood from poverty, made it into something great. And as you might expect of someone who has legends like this talked about him, he was wrongfully executed. But now fast forward to the year of 2001, and some young adults purchase the building in which he was executed and try and turn it into a nightclub to try and, you know, do as he did, bolster up the neighborhood again. And in so doing, the spirit of Jimmy Bones is disturbed and reawakened. And he begins to kind of work his dark magic into things. And this is where we get into the Hellraiser bit of it, because he begins to leech and feed off of these people, both metaphysically and literally, to try and build up his own physical form again. And to that end, we get some really, really neat, almost Hellraiser-style practical body ooze turning into muscle and tendrils and veins and body part effects that we used to have back then, which look really, really cool. But then, as things go along, we get into the exacting of vengeance, the part of Bones against the people who wronged him. And that reads to me more Candyman, because not only is he lashing out at the people who have moved into his establishment or are trying to kind of create their own community, but he also goes after people in the area who mistreat him. He's just out for blood, pretty much. It's eventually, it kind of just goes off the rails with its bizarrery and weirdness. And like, it goes from this moody and almost tragic, sympathetic revenge tale of a spirit long past into this almost horror comedy style climax with some jokes. Like, there's a point in this where Snoop Dogg is carrying around the decapitated head of one of his former enemies, and he's cracking lines, and I'm like, hey, come on, man, you didn't have to do me this bad, did you? Why are you keeping me around for? It's like banging him against the wall because he won't shut up, and it's just There's some a little bit of tone whiplash here and there, but I can't say it's necessarily unwarranted or distracting because it is having fun with itself, and honestly, that seems to be everything that's going on here. Snoop and everyone who are making this are having a great time doing it, whether they're playing it serious or going in for a joke. And I think it genuinely shows and makes it kind of one of those where you can dip your toes in both. You can get a laugh, you can get a good creepy vibe out of it. It's a good one for the spooky season, I feel.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I think I've seen a trailer where there's like a scene where like Snoop is talking to like one of his dogs and like makes a spooky face at her. I'm like, that looks silly.
Yeah, there's one or two moments where the effects don't necessarily translate well. Like you could see what they were trying to go for, but it didn't really land. And then there's other times where it like really feels above its pay grade, the kinds of effects that you're seeing on screen. It's a strange mix, but like I said, this is one of those where you can find yourself laughing, and then you can find yourself like genuinely impressed or creeps. So it's got a good balance of both.
Heck yeah, and Ernest Dickerson should be no stranger to those on this podcast. Hell, he directed one of my favorite movies of last Hoop-Tober, that being Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight.
Hell yeah, Demon Knight.
Yeah, he was Spike Lee's cinematographer for like the first long haul of Spike Lee's career, but he's gone on to do his own thing for a while, and God bless him, he makes some really fun genre movies.
Okay, because like I think I can see his influence there. Like this is a 2001 movie, but and I don't know if this is like a saving grace or maybe just like maybe it's just one out of the bunch, but this was not edited like an early 2000s movie. It does not feel like it has that kind of pacing, and for those who like me and you, Brett, who have kind of gone through a number of early 2000s movies fairly recently, we know what that kind of editing style is like. And to not see that here was actually kind of surprising and a little, and I think kind of adds to this film's credit.
Or you tell me this movie didn't remind you of 13 Ghosts?
Honestly, nothing reminds me of 13 Ghosts, and for that, I am thankful. Seriously, that movie gave my eyes cancer.
You're exaggerating again.
It hurt my eyes, dude.
Woof.
Like that movie was painful to sit and watch, just from a composition and like aesthetic it hurt. Not like Bones. Bones was actually a whole lot of fun and had some really cool scenes to it.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up Bones, toss it back in its little mausoleum, and we're gonna
crypt.
We're gonna move right next door to the coroner's office and talk about Body Bags. This is the joint co-directed by John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper, and starring Stacy Keach, David Warner, Sheena Easton, Debbie Harry, Twiggy, Robert Carradine, and one Mr. Mark Hamill. Again, Ty, you went your own way for this for these last few movies, so you can continue on down that road, old sport.
And so I shall. To say, oh man, I want John Carpenter as the coroner in more shit, please and thank you. I don't know if we'll ever get it anymore, but like, dang it, he was having such a good time, and I had a good time with him. He was throwing out jokes and making light of some weird, gruesome shit. Like, if we could have gotten some kind of TV serial from this, I would have eaten it up just to have John Carpenter be the host. But that's only a fraction of what Body Bags is about. So for its part, this is an anthology with 3 different stories. Let me see if I can remember because one of them, the first 2 are maybe not necessarily ones to write home about, but the third is definitely the one that stands out from the rest.
Which is hilarious because the first 2 are the segments directed by John Carpenter. So
yeah, well, like they definitely go for a more creep show sort of deal with this one, and for creep show's part, not necessarily every story needs to be scary. They just need to be like, weird and bizarre tales sometimes. And yeah, let me see. It's even hard to remember. The second one I know is the whole deal about the bald guy who wants his hair grown back, and apparently you shouldn't trust miracle cures that advertise on TV, and this is coming from someone who himself is bald. Like, just rock the bald look. It's seriously not that big a deal. And if someone claims that they can get you all your hair back, run away as fast as you can, because it's probably an extraterrestrial species trying to seed its way into the human population and take over. Because that's what that story turned out to be. The first, I am having a dickens of a time trying to remember what on earth it was about. The first of the body bags stories.
The first one was the gas station.
Ah, yeah, the slasher at the gas station.
Yeah, the one with Sam Raimi's dead body somewhere in the garage.
Oh, that was Sam Raimi? Yeah, that was Sam Raimi's corpse?
Yeah, supposedly, according to the credits.
Wow. The more you know. But yeah, that, I mean, if it isn't obvious from even just me trying to recall what the heck the story was about, the first didn't quite stand out as much as one might like. It was pretty standard horror fare. Like, I'll give props for the location. Like, I hadn't necessarily seen a horror story take place at a gas station as of yet.
I was going to say, you also be perked by the location because according to in-story lore of that segment, it takes place outside of Haddonfield.
Oh yeah, that's true. A little bit of a nod to Carpenter's other work. I think I remember hearing that and getting a little bit of a small fin. It's like, I see what you're doing here, Mr. Carpenter. But yeah, we had that one, followed up by the hair one, which, I mean, neither here nor there. It's okay. But then we're followed up by probably the best of the bunch, which, and I'm not saying that just because Mr. Mark Hamill is the lead in this, but the story is just simply titled I, and it's about a baseball player who suffers a terrible car accident because, dang it, he just needed to get that one tape into his car so he could listen to his special music or stories, I don't know, and loses one of his eyes. Fortunately, they are able to attempt basically an eye transplant from an unknown donor. It's successful. He gets his eye back and is able to see perfectly fine. The only alteration being it's a different color from his normal eye color, and so he needs to wear a contact to cover it. But then he starts getting these weird, like, flashes and seeing strange things from this eyeball. And my first thought is, well, this is the eye of a dead man. So now he's kind of peering into the beyond and able to see specters and stuff like that. But it doesn't quite go that route with it. Instead, we get a story where, almost a possession story, where the spirit of the former owner of this eye, who, as it turns out, was a death row inmate, put there for multiple homicides of various women who also happen to kind of look like Mark Hamill's wife in this feature, and it turns into a fight for supremacy over Mark Hamill's body and trying to save his relationship and the life of his wife as this evil tormentor that arrived through his eye tries to ruin his life. And what was the vibe? I remember taking note that this felt like something to me. It felt kind of Stephen King-ish in a way, if that makes sense, this style of story.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the idea of a haunted eye was also utilized by K-horror, because I'm pretty sure there was a Korean film called The Eye, which was remade in the mid-2000s with Jessica Alba.
I think it was like the whole domestic abuse angle that kind of made me think Stephen King, because that's very much a staple in his works, is the abusive man of the house sort of deal, even if through supernatural causes. But that being said, like, dang, does Mark pull off a great performance, like, jumping between the tragic character of the baseball player who loses his eye and almost his career, and this just absolutely scummy individual who, of course, has to use Bible scripture to condone everything that he's doing. And oh man, it goes to some pretty dark and brutal places with this one, but in a way that like isn't too stereotypical. Like, it's definitely cliche, but I think everyone involved, Mark and who was opposite him?
Twiggy.
Yeah, and Twiggy definitely deliver on their performances and make it very, very convincing, and just basically make the material, elevate the material to greater than what I think it might be just on paper. But yeah, overall, definitely a mixed bag as far as like an anthology like this goes, but I almost think that's to be expected for most horror anthologies these days. But I also found it enjoyable. I had a great time, especially with the in-betweens, with Mr. Carpenter being our host. And like I said before, I wish we could have gotten more of John Carpenter's coroner character. And even, I would have loved to even see the two doctors come back, which I know were the other two directors, Mr. Hooper and one other. Who was it?
Was it Mick Garris? Oh no, it was Tom Arnold. He's not a director. He's a comic and actor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tom Arnold and Mr. Hooper. I would have loved to have seen them come back and maybe mess with John some more. Because I liked the way this ended. It's like, get me the head saw, and you see John's corpse mouthing the words head saw and then silently screaming as the doctor goes to work. I don't know. This I think was a good setup for something that could have been a lot more. And I'm sad we didn't get to see more of it, because I think they could have had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, it's the thing that this got a lot of critique for back in the day. This was an obvious cash-in on the likes of Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, absolutely. Like, there's no doubt about that at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a fun rip. Like, not that there aren't even duplicates of, like, Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that. Like, even back then. Even later on, we still have series that do things like this. Hell, what is it? Are You Afraid of the Dark and the Goosebumps TV show? I could even say kind of crib off of Creepshow and things like that. It's just a style of storytelling. And to say that Creepshow is the only one that should be allowed to do that, I think is kind of dumb. And because, like, Carpenter and company, Hooper, like, do this with such style and fun and soul and heart to it. Like, there's not a lot to dislike about it. And if the only reason that this didn't get anywhere is because Creepshow did it first, just like, oh, come on, don't be petty.
Yeah, I think Body Bags is perfectly fine. I also agree that the final segment is the superior one of the bunch, even if a few people in my circle have gone to bat for the first two. It's like, yeah, they're fine, but it's, I don't know, like, this is the one thing from Tobe Hooper in the 90s that I actually appreciate. So, God, I've seen quite a few, although I get to see The Mangler, which some people have a lot of respect for, so someday.
I'll add it to my watch list.
Quit complaining. You know what you're in for when you joined this live. But yeah, Buyback, it's perfectly fun. I watched it when it was on Prime, and I believe it is currently available on Peacock, as well as Tubi TV, Pluto TV, IMDb TV, and Shout Factory TV.
I'm seeing here it may also be available on Shudder, so hey, cool.
Yes, so it is. I was looking at the free options, forgive me. Yeah, but yeah, it's fun enough. But that brings us to one of your penultimate picks. This is 1991's The People Under the Stairs, written and directed by one Mr. Wes-Craven, and starring Brandon Quinton Adams, Ving Rhames, Sean Whalen, AJ Langer, Bill Cobbs, and the greatest power couple in all of cultural history, Wendy Roby and Everett Goddamn McGill. This will be the last one that you'll be doing solo, because we can probably handle the last two together. So, yeah, Tell the audience about people understayers, bro.
Well, if you're looking for subtlety, it ain't here, because this movie wears its metaphor on its sleeve. White rich people bad, other people good, going into this, you'll know what it's about when you start watching it. But if you're good with that and you go along for the ride, you're still gonna be in for some pretty crazy shit. Because, man, does this one go places. We start off with a black family that is trying their damnedest to make ends meet while the mother is holed up sick in the home with cancer that can't be treated because they don't have enough money for any sort of medical service. And one member of their community coming saying, hey, I've got a way you can make some quick money. Let's go rob those landlords. And one little kid who's trying to be the man of the house and just try and provide for the family that's really struggling. So he goes in on this. And what they end up getting into turns into what starts out as a robbery turns into escape from this absolute house from hell, as our absolutely batshit crazy power couple, as you put it, Brett, does their damnedest to kill these two intruders in their home. And as they explore and try to find a way out, we discover that this lovely landlord couple have been kidnapping people and imprisoning them in the basement to the point where they are like white as ghosts and ravenous for any kind of food or any sort of like help from the outside. As like I said, this movie wears its metaphor right on its sleeve. You've got the rich and wealthy exploiters and literally putting people under their feet. Not to say that all of the members of this demented household are absolutely ravenous for whoever they come across. We have one daughter of the household who is like one of
Alice.
Yes, Alice, who is one of those absolute, like homeschool shut in, doesn't know the outside world much, only knows what she's been taught, but does her damnedest to be as nice as she can without getting beaten too badly by her parent folk. And then we have the absolute MVP of the movie, best friend to Alice, and the most evasive boy who hides in the walls ever, Roach. Now, Roach, unfortunately, had his tongue cut out at one point, so he's not necessarily the most vocal of individuals. But god damn it, he's one you want in your corner as you're trying to navigate this household. He knows every nook and cranny and has survived for years, despite the patriarch of the household running around in bondage leather garb with a shotgun and blasting away at the ceiling and walls trying to nab him.
Tyler, it's called a gimp suit.
Oh, is that what it's called? I just thought it was a very specific kind of leather armor. I don't know. I don't kink shame here. Like, I'm not here to judge. But, like I said, it starts out as one thing and turns into something else entirely. We go from a simple attempt at home robbery to a guy in a leather gimp suit and a shotgun chasing children around inside the walls of his own house, sicking this absolutely ravenous Rottweiler on them whenever he can. And it's a story of attempted survival for about 2/3 of the movie. And then, fortunately for us, our hero eventually makes it out. But bless his heart, he can't bring himself to just abandon Alice, who helped him through so much. So we then go from our home escape plotline to almost a raid on the fortress sort of deal. And for as crazy as that middle third became, now we get the entire freaking community involved in this, and things just go, again, off the rails. people trying to sabotage it from the outside. The people, as the title of the movie states, the people under the stairs eventually revolt and start fighting back. So this, as it turns out, incestuous couple have the floor almost literally ripped out from underneath them. I don't want to spoil everything of what happens because, damn it, this movie goes absolutely bonkers towards the end. And it's an absolutely fun time, metaphor and all. And for its part, I think delivers really, really well on the creeps and some of the startling scares at the start, but also knows how to deliver a good climax where all the loose ends are all tied up in a happy bow, and we actually have a fairly nice happy ending after this one, which, compared to most horror movies I think I watched this Hoop-Tober, was a pleasant surprise.
I say this having not seen all of Wes Craven's movies yet. People on the Stairs is my favorite Wes Craven. The movie owns on so many levels. It's a ludicrously gonzo leftist critique of everything wrong with capitalism under Reagan and going forward, unfortunately. I have been waiting a long time to pick up this movie on Blu-ray, mostly because I'm debating whether to buy the Region B release, which has Roach on the cover, or whether to buy the Shout Factory release to Region A, which only has the couple on the cover. I'm like,
oh, come on, go for Roach.
It is a pretty nice cover. I'll send it to you after this, because it looks pretty neat. Yeah, I really freaking love People on the Stairs. I'm kind of sad I wasn't able to revisit it with you, but you know what? You watched it nonetheless. It's good with or without company, even though I think this would have ripped as the final movie of Hoop-Tober with all your buddies there.
Oh yeah, that's fair. This would have been a very fun one to check out as my last Hoop-Tober flick. But for what it's worth, that's not what I decided on. But I do think we had a good time with what I did choose as my final pick.
Movie rules.
Now, actually, if we are moving on here, if we are set to move forward, before we jump into the final pick from both of us, I think you may have accidentally missed one of mine. A certain flick from 1968.
Oh,
starring
shit!
a certain Christopher Lee.
Damn it!
One more for me to ramble about.
This is because I was mad you watched it without me, because I hadn't seen this one. I was like, oh, god damn it, I heard good things about this one, too. Yeah, alright, yeah, you caught me. I cocked it up, Royal. Let's jump back in time and talk about The Devil Rides Out.
Ah, Hammer films. Is there one that we've been disappointed with yet?
Yeah, this is the Terrence Fisher film, written by Richard Matheson. Hell yeah. Always good to see him pop up. I watched a few with him attached to the credits here, mostly the Corman films. But yeah, this stars Christopher Lee, Charles Gray, Leon Green, Gwen Francon Davies, and Rosalind Landor. I heard plenty of interesting things about this. This is apparently Goro's favorite Hammer film, which gave me a lot of interest in it. And unfortunately, it was not to be this season, but next time, Gadget. Yes, tell me about Devil Rides Out, seeing as I still have not seen the damn thing yet, although maybe not be spoilerific as possible.
Yeah, I'll try and avoid spoilers for you. The basic premise of this is... Let me get my cast down here. Yeah, basically, Christopher Lee and a friend of his together and are trying to locate what basically amounts to their nephew. They're not related by blood, but they were really good friends with the father of this guy and kind of just treat him like family anyway. So they're arriving in England trying to track him down and check on him because they haven't heard from him in a while. And that's unusual, so they want to make sure their friend is okay. And upon arriving at his estate, they discover that he has quite a large crowd gathered as a party of sorts. But the more they interact with these people, the more they realize that he's not necessarily throwing just any old shindig. And then after exploring the household a little more, they discover some indications that they are preparing for a satanic blood sacrifice ritual. And this is like right off the bat. Like within the first 10 minutes, we figure this out. And so from that point on, it is a battle of good versus evil for the soul of this poor 20-something. And he is absolutely adamant that he cannot escape this cult. And actually, for his part, there's quite a bit of reason shown to say that, like, maybe it's a bit harder than just getting up and driving away. Like, there's some serious black magic and stuff thrown around to try and, like, rear in the soul of this kid. Christopher Lee and co. are doing their absolute damnedest and throwing back everything else they have, from holy relics to remedies to even some black magic of his own that he has studied to kind of fight fire with fire. But it's this spiritual war of attrition. Christopher Lee is pulling out all the stops in his black magic occult knowledge library, trying to avoid as much loss as he can. Because goodness knows, we get some actual pretty sincere casualties in this as we go along. But yeah, it is a war of devilry for the ages, with Lee taking for not too many of the Hammer films, this is one of his roles as the hero. And for his part, he's one I necessarily wouldn't want to go up against, because he is a force to be reckoned with, as far as his knowledge of both the occult and holy magics as well. And it gets to some seriously dark stuff. I honestly think you'll very much enjoy it, Brett. Whatever it is, you manage to get around to it. And hell, if you want, I would be absolutely thrilled to go back and watch this again with you, because I had a great time with it. And honestly, this is one I would definitely recommend from the Hammer Spooky Film Library.
Well, hot damn. I was about to focus on the fact that Goro really loved it because he was glad to see a movie from Hammer with Christopher Lee in the heroic lead role, because unfortunately he was tapped to play the heavy / the creature so often in his time at that particular studio. However, you and I both managed to catch one where he was in the heroic mold. I also caught up with the Gorgon as part of my particular marathon, and that one also has him as a rather curmudgeonly professor who isn't quite the lead, but he is the most competent character in the movie. So it's like, just imagine Christopher Lee just barging in, like, you're doing this too slowly. Come in, let me tell you how it's done. God damn it! It's really entertaining, him popping up on the Gorgon, especially with his like powder white wig and like big thick bushy mustache. It's like, ooh, makeup Christopher Lee.
Honestly, it surprises me at all that anyone would even dare say, like, no to Christopher Lee in this. Like, because he still has that intimidating presence that he's always had. And there's, like, a couple points in this where he gets absolutely livid with the kid he's trying to save. And it's like, why are you not even paying attention or even, like, taking into account what Christopher Lee, of all people, is telling you? If Christopher Lee tells you that these people are dangerous, you run!
No one says no to Christopher Lee. Well, within reason, I should think.
Only person who could might be Peter Cushing.
And even then, it's a tough call. It's like, I'm probably gonna lean towards the man who murdered a shit ton of Nazis in the war, but...
Yeah.
We have just 2 more films to go through before we wrap up this podcast right and proper. And first up, on Halloween, we did manage to get together, and we watched my final pick together. That would be 1992's Ghost Watch. This particular film fulfilled the second haunted house feature on my list, as well as the second film from my birth year, 1992. And this particular film, quote unquote, it was broadcast on television, but it has been re-released in singular form throughout only recently because of we'll get to it. This was directed by Leslie Manning and stars Michael Parkinson, Sarah Green, Craig Charles, and Mike Smith, amongst many, many, many others. But those are the key 4 we should focus on during the review. Now, Ghost Watch in theory, is simply a BBC news broadcast that is basically the equivalent of a 2020 special over here in America. It is a bunch of newscasters saying, well, we heard you like those haunted houses, eh, love? Well, we're going to explore a real haunted house. It's going to be all spooky and scary and... Shut up, Craig. Fuck up, Craig. I'm sorry, I was supposed to break character. The delineations is that Sarah Green and Craig Charles are out on location at this haunted house, interacting with a family who is basically living through the Enfield poltergeist, but it's not the Enfield poltergeist for various choice reasonings. And meanwhile, Michael Parkinson and Mike Smith are back in studio interviewing a particular paranormal doctorate. I forget her goddamn name. Dr. Pascoe. Yeah, meanwhile, in studio, Mike Smith and Michael Parkinson is primarily interacting with Dr. Pascoe, this paranormal... I believe they delineate her as a paranormal expert. She's not a doctor. Well, she's a doctor, but they don't specifically describe what she is focusing on besides paranormal activity. And while we cut back and forth between the studio interacting with the actual callers into the BBC that night, so we do have live audience interaction with this particular broadcast, as well as the presented as happening at the same time haunting being experienced by Sarah Green and, to a lesser extent, Craig, who is just outside being all, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to introduce these people who have their own ghost stories to talk about. That's right. It's like, okay, Craig, can we go back to Sarah? She's... Ghostwatch. It is a 90-minute spook film that is in the same vein as Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast. Brought a country to its knees for about 90 minutes because a lot of people came in late and did not realize this was a fictional program. That's the premise of this. We didn't even go into the fact that there's a ghost apparently nicknamed Pipes in this film who keeps popping up, which, according to the producers, is in at least 9 separate parts of the film, although we only spotted him like 4 or 5 times, so...
I'll say, he was an invasive specter.
Yeah. He also took his leave. Everyone's like, hey, what's that? Look back. Oh, he's gone. It's like, huh. Okay.
I smell production.
Yeah, post-production even. Tyler, you were not aware of this before I brought it to you.
Indeed, I was not.
What did you think when I first brought it to your attention, and how did you and what were your immediate thoughts post experience?
Before going into it, just going off of title and everything like that, I figured it would be some kind of ghost hunting sort of venture. Like, I had no clue it was going to be presented like... Excuse me. I had no idea it was going to be presented like found footage style almost. Like, this is a recording of a broadcast from such and such time sort of deal. Like, I had no clue this was going to be played so very straight. Going into it, like, it became more obvious to me, I suppose, like, nowadays, that it was kind of like this scripted sort of event. But the surprise of learning just how many people took this to be so very real was genuinely surprising.
I mean, given the way it's presented and the professionalism with which it's provided, it's not surprising. It's like this feels legit in several regards.
That's true.
We who have been trained by several years of film watching can very easily spot the production aspects in the, but to Joseph Q. Publique, I can see people like, no man, that shit was real.
When did the whole when did reality TV really start taking off? Was that like early 90s, early 2000s?
The first cinema verite-esque project was in the 70s. I believe it was An American Family, but reality TV as a whole, I believe, kickstarted with The Real World, which I think was 93, 94.
Okay, so this is right around that time where things started to, like, seeds were starting to be planted about, like, you know, trying to present quote-unquote real life to people through television and things like that. So, though this is not uncharted territory. It's definitely kind of a first for its time. So I feel like that definitely played into just how many people bought into it, because like, you know, this something like this had never been presented outside of a movie theater where you know going into it that it's going to be, you know, effects and fakery. Like at the time, TV was kind of that thing where you went to this like either it's going to be a fake show or news. And this kind of is one of those examples of like one of the first things that treaded that line and kind of got into the gray area between there. So for its time, like this is definitely, I was almost revolutionary then.
I just did a quick bit of research. Turns out The Real World premiered 5 months before Ghostwatch landed on BBC television.
So yeah, just at the cusp of it all then.
Yeah, so... And then again, there were several drafts of Ghostwatch before the final product that made it to television. Initially, it was supposed to be a miniseries, where it would be like a limited, like 6-episode series exploring ghosts, but then basically, like when Matt Mercer was brought on to The Late Show, it eventually was trimmed until they said, okay, you got 90 minutes to tell the ghost story, go. And they're like, okay.
I mean, for the time that they had, they delivered.
Yeah. This has a lot of solid actual spooks to it. The Pipes is a really spooky entity, and the veritable presentation lends a lot to this. I'm really jealous that I couldn't earlier during the Halloween season, Chicago had a like 24 hours of horror marathon during which they were going to show a DCP of Ghostwatch like on the big screen. I was like, ooh, that would have been really neat. You see that in a theater environment, because it just I know plenty of people who personally want to go back in time to watch this live because they only caught it later on like various like bootleg copies. But imagine watching this live back in the day. Like that would have been quite the little experience.
Oh, that would have been a TV event for me, I think.
Yeah, like it would have stuck with you. And again, we're not ripping on this because we caught this later. No, it's more like, oh, like damn, this would have made an impression on me back in the day if I had caught this and not been able to reckon with, oh, it's actually fake, because it takes a certain age for you to realize that there is a distinct separation between presentation and reality.
Yeah, definitely. And like, well, I can't really speak too much of it because I didn't even exist at that point. So, like, a bit hard to see something when you're not even conceived of yet.
Yeah, but Ghostwatch, luckily this is available on the Internet Archive, so it is widely available now. BFI did release it on VHS, and 101 Films also issued it on DVD. So, it is available finally, even if in its immediate aftermath, there was a bit of controversy with this particular film, given that it pulled in a relative furor of activity. The BBC estimates the switchboard that night received at least 1 million calls into the station as a result of the programming.
I think I read somewhere that most of those, I think, were children.
Yes, and unfortunately, it is connected to at least one person taking their life because it was so convincing in its horrific drama. So, unfortunately, that did color the reputation of this particular special for many, many years down the line. Again, it's a really effective piece of spook cinema. And even then, it ain't on television, it's not cinema. It's like, well, you know what I mean. It's a very enticing ghost story. And god dang it, it's fun. And spooky. And that's all I want out of my Hoop-Tober viewings, god damn it.
Amen to that.
But yes, this brings us to the final event of the Hoop-Tober for both of us. This would be 1981's Dark Night of the Scarecrow, a movie which I had been doing the representing for quite a while since I caught it back in, it was Spooktober, my first run around of the Hoop-Tober mythos back in the day. This, as I said, was released in 1981. It was produced for Warner Brothers Television and broadcast on CBS the weekend before Halloween, October the 24th of that year. And this particular production stars Larry Drake, Charles Durning, Tanya Crow, Jocelyn Brando, and Lane Smith, as well as a person named Claude Earl Jones, who is white. Therefore, I don't think he's related to the other famous Earl Jones of entertainment. But you never know.
Like, I brought up when I watched this movie, because at the time I was carpooling with my boss, and I brought up that name, and he says, like, not related to James Earl Jones, I imagine. Like, but I'm like, no, he's very, very white.
White and trashy.
At least in this movie.
Are you saying that? Okay, moving on. Dark Night of the Scarecrow is the story of two friends. Young Southern belle, I believe approximately 8 years old, Mary Lee Williams, and her best buddy, Charles Elliott Ritter, better known as Bubba, a very large but very gentle man of a little mental age, shall we say. One day, while they're hanging out, the mean-spirited postman Otis Hazelrig is bothering them because it just ain't right for them to be hanging out like that. It's bad. How dare he could do something bad. But they can't prove anything, so whatever. But Mary Lee makes the curious decision to enter a garden and is promptly mauled by a vicious dog, even though there are signs all over saying, hey, beware of dog. And Mary Lee pulls the classic that says don't enter, but that doesn't mean us, Robin routine.
Oh, not the DW. This sign can't stop me because I can't read.
Nah, I go with the Batman because, I don't know, broader audience appeal, in theory.
I suppose.
But Bubba brings her mildly injured form to the authorities, but of course some people think, oh, she dead. We gotta kill the man who obviously caused it. So Otis forms a vigilante mob out of his three best buddies, that being Philby, Skeeter, Harless, and...
Oh, that's the three.
Yeah, Philby, Skeeter, and Harless are the other three. And they go to hunt him down. Bubba's mother tells Bubba to hide doing the hiding game, which means he dresses himself up as a scarecrow in the middle of a cornfield to evade. However, the bloodhounds that the Quartet Lynch mob bring immediately find him and empty several layers of buckshot into this scarecrow mere seconds before the CB radio pops up like, hey, Otis, maybe you might not want to do that. It turned out he innocent, you know? And he's like, well, they can't prove anything. Of course, cut to the court where the lead prosecuting attorney is very much all about they did it wrong. They murdered a man. Look, I have the pitchfork right here. You came after the pitchfork, boo. That's dangerous. And of course, they get let off due to lack of evidence. And DA Sam Willick is all like, "You'll pay one way or another," narrowing his eyes at the foursome as they leave the courthouse. Meanwhile, Mary Lee's all wondering, "Where's Bubba? I miss Bubba. Where is he?" But Mama Ritter just can't come to tell the girl that he dead. But sooner or later, some strange happenings start besetting this little town that all these people are orbiting around, including a mysterious scarecrow that keeps popping up in the fields of those who caused Bubba's death. And that leads to a bunch of mysterious deaths that populate the remainder of the runtime of Dark Night of the Scarecrow. Now, Tyler, you added this on my recommendation to your list. Apparently just looking at my shit and just saying, ooh, 81, horror, Dark Night, Scarecrow. Yay!
Checks out 1981, horror movie, and my buddy gave it 4 stars. Hell yeah, I'll look into it.
Excellent. And how did you come out of Dark Night of the Scarecrow? We had quite the experience watching this with some buddies.
Yeah, a number of them. Yeah, this was You correct me if I'm wrong here, but this was also kind of one of those made-for-TV movies, correct?
This was made for TV. Yeah, it was presented on CBS back in the day.
Yeah, so the rip we had was not necessarily the most detailed thing ever. But that being said, this was, in some ways, very much a surprising watch. Because, and looking back into it, like researching it, it makes perfect sense. This was a made-for-TV movie in 1981. So, for what you expect of a supernatural revenge slasher flick, that being, like brutal kills and, maybe some viscera here and there, at least some fake blood of some kind. Because this was made for TV, they couldn't use that. They had to censor their kills. But at the same time, they took that and kind of retrofitted it to a means of performing these kills that either A, kind of left it up to the imagination a little bit, or B, were incredibly brutal but bloodless ways to go.
Oh no, there is that one scene involving the ketchup that got pretty gruesome.
That's true. There was some ketchup in there. But the cut,
yeah. cut from wood chipper to ketchup splurting all over the place. Like, I see what you did.
It was actually
there.
a dollop of jam from the guy's breakfast. Like, guy falls into wood chipper, plop raspberry jam. It's like, oh god. The implication of it is that was just well timed, well edited together.
There's some tongue-in-cheek editing going on behind the scenes here.
Oh yeah, and you gotta love it. Like, it's really good stuff. But like, even the second death of the movie, which was the guy who locks himself in the grain mill and gets buried, like, that's some brutal shit. Like, that's a terrible way to go out, being crushed and suffocated to death by pounds and pounds of grain. Like, it's bloodless, but at the same time, you're sitting there watching it, and it's like, good lord. But the other clever thing this does is you don't get the same hints of the killer in the background that you might with some other slasher flicks. You don't have the silhouette walking through the doorway or just barely noticeable in the dim light overhead. And for the most part, like, there seems to be someone pulling some strings in the background to make these deaths happen, but it could also be, it's very, very close to being said that these deaths were brought about just by the mishaps that befell the people that died. Like, the first one, I think we even joked, was just a guy who scared himself shitless and fell into his own wood chipper just on accident. Then, like, a guy accidentally locking himself inside the grain mill. Like, that's something that could very feasibly happen, and no one finds him in time to save him. And hell, even the third death of the trio is at the hands of
one of the other guilty parties.
Yeah, is at the hands of Otis. And that's just his own paranoia getting to him, and him just, like, losing his mind. So it's just these subtle things that almost play on the idea of the unreliable narrator at work, which is personally a favorite sort of trope of mine in horror storytelling, if it's pulled off well. And only at the very, very end do we kind of get even the subtlest hint that there maybe was actually something supernatural going on here. That's at the very tail end, like the very last thing you see.
And while it is seeded kind of throughout the movie, it comes from way out of left field for the most part. It's like, oh, okay.
It very much does. So, as far as this goes, it probably won't be what you expect to see just, like, looking at the promotional artwork or, like, going into it thinking, like, revenge slasher. But it will not be disappointing because of it. It's going to be just a different sort of take on that style of story, and for its part, it executes it expertly. This is a very well-made movie, and I was very glad that this is what we ended off with as far as the Hoop-Tober month is concerned.
Yeah, I I legitimately enjoyed this back when I saw it back in 2014. I found it thoroughly charming and really spooky and atmospheric for the most part. It's very much a heavy on atmosphere spook film. There's very little in the way that would actually cause anyone active harm from watching. I think my mother could probably watch this and enjoy it well enough.
Oh, I think she'd be fine. I think.
She demanded Paranorman be turned off is the thing, so that's the bar. So I've read some reviews that are critiquing Charles Durning's role as Otis is a bit too over the top and miscast. I'm like, no, he feels like an evil son of a bitch. Like, just look at the scene where he confronts Mary Lee in the school. It's like, ew, no.
Yeah, like the script even takes our lead antagonist and kind of turns him into the horror villain for a little bit.
I mean, he is the villain of the film, so
more behaving like, I suppose, a supernatural killer would, I suppose.
I don't see that, but
like, you know, popping up in the weird places and, like, you know, all wide-eyed and crazy and stuff like that. It's like, hey,
he's just drunk.
I mean, that could also be the case. But yeah, there's also, like, he's a very easily detestable character from the get-go, just because he does, like, treat Bubba so terribly. And, like, as do the rest of his little posse there. For this movie's part, I think it does a okay job of depicting someone I assume to be on the autistic spectrum. It's a bit rough in that, yes, that is the person who ends up being the biggest victim in all this. On the same token, like, it also depicts him as very, very tragic, very, very sympathetic, and also very, very likable. Like, he gets along with this little girl and, like, would do absolutely nothing to harm anyone. He's just a guy who behaves a little strangely.
Yeah, the horrific prejudices of others being the true horror of sorts.
Hashtag justice for Bubba.
Well, he might be doing okay. One can't really tell. And we never really got any follow-up to this, although apparently there is a Blu-ray of this available out there. So, it can be picked up since you weren't disappointed, but you were like, the quality could be a little better. I was like, well, there is a Blu-ray, so maybe they probably cleaned it up a little bit for that.
So yeah, for the online rip we got, it was a bit choppy at some points and hard to see a few things. Though that kind of lent to it in a couple scenes, but yeah, I would not mind a bit of a clearer take on this one. So maybe I'll nab myself that Blu-ray.
And it makes a very nice place to wrap up the Hoop-Tober season. I should think so myself.
I think so too. What better way to end a Hoop-Tober night than with a dark night of the Scarecrow?
So, looking back on this particular Hoop-Tober, what was your favorite watch of the bunch? We're not going to go into a least favorite because that seems, well, beating a horse unnecessarily. So what?
We all know what my least favorite would be.
Yeah. So let's look at what you really like. What was the best thing you won?
Oh, if I had to choose one, You know, if you have a winner pick, like, you say it, because I need a minute to think about this one.
This isn't a cheat, but in terms of features, mine was Curse the Werewolf. I really, really dug the atmosphere, the setting, and the acting on that one's part. But also, tagging along right side of it is the Scooby-Doo project, because that was the most entertaining thing I watched the entire season. We watched that first day, so it set an absurdly high watermark for the rest of the season, but Curse the Werewolf sort of lived up to that. Following closely behind, I greatly enjoyed the Japanese folk horror Onibaba, in that it plays a lot with a different type of horror. It's very psychosexual in its terror, for the most part, but it wasn't as brutally enjoyable as, say, the Scooby-Doo or the Hammer in particular. But yeah, also note the Gorgon. The Gorgon is also hella fun.
I think for my favorite, I gotta go with The Wailing from this Hoop-Tober.
Again, somebody watching the very first day, setting a watermark.
Yeah, I know, and nothing else quite reached, like, the blowing of expectations out of the water that this one did. I knew this was gonna, like, I was sleeping on this one for a while. I kept reading about it. I kept seeing good things about it, but I never got around to it. So to have that be the introduction to my Hoop-Tober was a really, really great start. I think a couple or a few that I think would kind of all line up pretty well as far as a second place choice goes. No, actually, you know what? It's a 4-way tie.
God damn it.
Sorry. Hey, there were some great movies. People Under the Stairs, Body Snatchers, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, and Bones. I think kind of all hit that same tier of really, really good, and I would recommend people watch.
Fair. I can't hate on someone for enjoying movies. That's not what we're here for. We're here to celebrate shit, and that's what we're gonna do. And with that, we have finally wrapped up the Hoop-Tober season. Hopefully, last year we managed to wrap it up just in time, getting the podcast even out right before like November it even really started proper. But things that come and they go. Maybe we'll just make sure to get all of our stuff done in the middle, like we did last time, rather than me holding out for like, maybe Tyler want to watch this one with me. Maybe I just make a decision and watch shit instead of waiting. I was glad to share so many films with you, and I'm glad you managed to watch so much new to you stuff that can potentially become a new tradition.
Oh, I'm absolutely planning on taking part in Hoop-Tober number 9.
Yeah, whatever subtitle El Bueno Monstro decides to attach to that one.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what he comes up with.
But we managed to check off all the requirements. Tyler did it in 18. I did it in 32. I did miss one film on my list, but it was not a requirement. It was the 1936 film Dracula's Daughter, which I do own on Blu-ray, so it's not like I'm never going to watch it. It's more like I wanted to watch it, but I managed to watch another 1930s film in place of it to take its spot.
Nice. Save it for next year.
And if for those of you who want to check those out, my tapes 1 through 3 delineated exactly what I watched solo, as well as a couple of things I watched with Peter, but, I record when I can and talk with who I can.
Peter gets in there every so often.
But yeah, we finished it all up in only 5 tapes. And for those of you who are very anxious to hear my voluptuous voice again, fear not. I have another podcast guest appearance planned in the near future, where I'll be guesting on a podcast to talk about some Japanimation in the near future. So we got that coming up. We've also got various other things in the pot. And come January, February, there's going to be a year in review. God knows who's going to be on it besides the usual suspects, but we're going to figure it out as we go along.
Hey, nothing like getting the old crew together.
But as it stands, I have been Brett, the voice without body.
I have been Tyler, your warrior from the wastes.
And this has been the Hoop-Tober tapes. And while this particular series is at its end, fear not. More volumes incoming. Just a little while down the road. Have a spooky rest of the year, y'all. And take care.